everyone. Welcome back to the show. It's so good to start the week together. I am excited because I just came back from Keller Williams National Conference. It was in Atlanta this year and it was phenomenal. And among a lot of highlights, one of the highlights for me was getting to really hear Jay Shetty speak for my first time live. And if you're not familiar with Jay Shetty, I will just tell you that he was born in London and he's got, I think, the most successful, the most listened to podcast in the world. It's called On Purpose. And the thing that's so fascinating about Jay, he has this incredible energy. He was a former Hindu monk. He actually spent 3 years as a monk in India before he transitioned out of that, and he uses his experiences and his knowledge to really teach us about living life with intention and living life on purpose. He has a best-selling book, Think Like a Monk. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes for you in case you want to check that out. And I just feel like he is such an interesting individual because he really blends this ancient wisdom with modern understanding and uses modern technology to reach so many people. And so when I heard that he was going to be our keynote speaker, I got really excited. I do listen to his podcast. He talks a lot about health and wellness on the podcast and living with intention. And so I knew that it was going to be an incredible experience, which it was. And I also knew as he started talking that I would share my notes with you. So I hope you're ready. I'm going to do my best to share some of the things that Jay talked about from the stage. So the question he opened with was this: what no longer serves you? And I thought that was such a great question because we just have to accept the fact that the world is always changing and so are we, and so is our life. And that there are going to be things in our world that maybe are no longer in alignment with us or no longer support us or serve us. And that when we ask that question, we have to be willing to look for the answer. And then when we find the answer, I think we have to be willing to act on it. So when he asked what no longer serves you, he encouraged us to think about it in terms of how your growth has put you into a new place in your life that probably is calling new things in. And, you can look back and be grateful and really appreciate all of the things that you've experienced before, all of the people, all of the trials and errors, all of the wins and losses, and be grateful for that and still be looking for and yearning for more. So I'll leave you with that question: what no longer serves you? I think this is a great question to ask about where you are in your life and just taking some inventory and assessing where you are, what you need, what you don't need anymore. I think we just have to be honest about what we're tolerating sometimes. And also, what can we make room for? What can we make room so that we can call new things into our existence? So I thought that was powerful. And then Jay went on to talk about resilience. And he shared his thoughts on resilience in a way that was just a little different than I think what we normally hear or think of when we hear the word resilient. At its core, resilience is the ability to mentally and or emotionally cope with a crisis. Sometimes people think about it in terms of bouncing back or returning to something. And what Jay talked about was resilience can also be in a very quiet, determined way. Sometimes our strength shows up in ways that are not so loud, not so pivotal. Sometimes the resilience shows up in ways that just speak to our inner core, that speak to our spirituality. And I thought that was really, really fascinating. So then Jay moved into what can plant the seeds of resilience. And he referred to it as these different mindsets. And I want to break it down for you so that you can also understand it in the way that Jay teaches it. So as he continued to teach us from stage, he said that resilience is a muscle. And it can be developed specifically through encountering or navigating uncertainty or uncomfortable or challenging situations. But it's also something that can happen incrementally, kind of like the way a child might learn to walk, and that they only, succeeded because they chose to get up repeatedly after falling. And so I thought that was a great way to explain resiliency too. And so he has this framework that I want to give to you now for building this resilience. And I think this is probably one of the greatest skills any of us can really embrace. And it can help us navigate so much in our own lives. And so this framework for resilience revolves around a couple of specific mental shifts and habits. And I think there are 5 here that I'm going to give you. And these 5 mindsets will help you build your self-confidence. And then we're going to talk about some habits that will help you build resilience. So let's start with these 5 mindsets for self-confidence. What Jay had shared with us is that he identified these 5 critical mindsets that can help any of us overcome any feelings of inadequacy and help us really build that inner strength that we will need for resilience. And so the first one is how you view your pain. The way you view your pain affects everything. And so if you have the ability to reframe pain as a tool for growth rather than just a negative experience, that can catapult you forward, because when you look at it as a tool for growth, you'll pull the learning from it. You'll pull the lessons from it that will help you go forward. He went on to then say, too, everyone starts from zero. Everyone starts from zero. So don't compare yourself to anyone else, because what you're comparing yourself to might be the middle of their growth, might be something, you might see what they've achieved, but we don't get to see where they started. And so when you start the comparison and you start to look at what everyone else is doing, it's not equitable, because we can't understand the journey they were on. They too started at one point in a place where maybe they had no or little experience. And so everyone starts from zero. So there's no point in comparing yourself to anyone else, because you're on your own journey. So we have to run our own race. That's what I took from that. The next one is your first time will never be your best time. So just let go of the pressure. Stop putting all this pressure on yourself to be perfect, because the first time you try anything, you're going to suck. We all do. So if the first time is not your best time, just let go of the expectation and realize that every time you do something, you're going to get better. Every time you do something, you're going to evolve. And I needed to be reminded of that message. I thought that was powerful. Your story matters. So don't let go of that personal narrative, the unique experiences, and whatever has built you up until this point is your foundation. So your story does matter. And also that you can increase your self-esteem by helping someone else. When you look at how we all have our own unique characteristics, right? We were 13,000 people in this huge, huge space. And he actually had us get up and move around the room based on how we self-identify parts of our personality. It was fascinating. You had to be there for that. But really what the message was is that we all have these unique abilities, and we have to be willing to, I think, show those unique abilities and use them to help someone else, especially someone who might not be as far ahead on the journey as we are, because then we can turn around and help them in a way that makes us the mentor. And that's such a gratifying experience, because we can all grow when we choose to share our knowledge and we choose to support each other and mentor each other. So that was awesome. All right, then we moved into these 5 habits for building resilience. And these 5, when you hear them, I think you're going to agree with me. They're very simple, yet very profound, which again, if you're a fan of Jay Shetty, that is Jay. It's simple and profound. And so what Jay talked about were these 5 habits that will help you build resilience. And he really wanted to advocate the fact that this should be practiced daily, and that it becomes fuel. It becomes fuel for your mind to really become more resilient. And God knows, in the crazy world we're living in, with all the noise and all the messages that are coming at us on any given day, the ability to grow in our resilience is probably our best defense. And so here are the 5 habits to focus on every single day. So the first one is thankfulness or gratitude. We've talked about that a lot here on Mojo in the past. It is probably the highest vibration we can experience as human beings. And what I love about gratitude is that it's a pattern interrupt. In other words, and Jay said this too, that you can't have a grateful thought and feel anxious at the same time. You can't be grateful and angry at the same time. And so it's a stabilizer. And so when you think about how many thoughts we have in a day, I think research shows we're having like 80,000 random thoughts. And I don't know, 85% of them, I think, are usually in some negative form or fear-based form. And so the more we can really step into gratitude throughout the day, we're just interrupting those negative patterns, and we're shifting our energy, and we're shifting our focus, we're shifting our vibration, because again, you can't be grateful and bitter and angry at the same time. You can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. So it's this wonderful interruption, and it allows us to shift our focus to really, I think, being more present. Instead of thinking about what we're missing out on or what we're lacking or what we need, which can create a lot of anxiety, gratitude brings us right back into the present, and it's grounding. So that's the first habit you want to develop if you can really understand the importance of building resilience. And I'll say one other thing about gratitude, and Jay said it too, that you want to make sure that you express your gratitude. So if you're feeling gratitude towards someone, tell them, share it with them. Tell them what they've done or what you've witnessed that you're feeling, so wonderful and grateful for, because that's a higher vibration too. And now you're bringing them into it because they're going to feel great about it. So your gratitude should always be expressed. It should always be specific, personalize it, call it out, and let the other person know how you feel. The second habit for building resilience is insight, or just being learning based. Dedicating time every day to study, to learn, to step into something that maybe is more about wisdom, and really looking at how you can develop more insight, more understanding through the books you're reading, the people you're listening to, the podcasts that you're following, so that the knowledge can help you do the things you want to do better, easier, faster. It gives you new perspectives, right? Because if we're not always learning, then are we really evolving? And so our growth has to be intentional. I'm very learning based. I think many of you are. That's why you probably are taking the time to listen to this podcast, and probably a few others. So that's great. And I think having the dedicated time will make that intention really come to life for us in a big way. So being learning based is powerful. The third habit for building resilience, mindfulness, practicing presence, being present, learning how to observe your thoughts, how to change your thinking, how to stay more in the present so that you can manage your emotions, manage your stress, and really avoid being overwhelmed, especially by the future. When we allow our thoughts to go too forward, when we fast forward too far into the future, for a lot of us, it can create a lot of anxiety. And look, that's different than saying, I want to create vision and I want to set some goals. I'm talking about really allowing those thoughts to be that freight train that just speeds forward into the future, and really making you feel uneasy because the future is unclear. And we can't control more than what we have in front of us on any given day. So the biggest opportunity you have is today. Today is the day that you choose how to manage your time, how to follow through on your intentions, how to focus on certain activities. Today is the only day I have. Now, I can think about what I'm going to work on tomorrow, but then I'm spending so much time worrying about that when I could be doing something else today. So, being mindful and practicing presence is the third habit for building resilience. And I think it also helps you check in with yourself in a more appropriate way, helping you to really manage a lot so that you can say to yourself, what do I need to do to make today successful? And if we start out each morning with that thought, what do I need to do today to make today successful? Then we are able to set our priorities. And I think for a lot of us, when we get off track, it's because we allow distractions to come in because we just don't know what our priorities are. We don't align with our priorities. And Jay actually talked about two types of days. So before I go on to number 4, I just want to say this. He talked about an effective day and an efficient day. Look, there are times when we have efficient days, which means we just have to get some things done. But then there are times when we have an effective day. And maybe there's one big objective for the day, and that is what we put our time and our priority to. But it's effective because it's moving the needle. It's helping us stay on course. It's getting us closer to our goals. And so I think knowing which kind of day you're going to have puts you in control. So I thought that was really big. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the fourth habit for building resilience, and that is exercise. Yeah, movement. Keeping the body active to maintain mental clarity. And Jay put this in a different context that resonated with me. And I can't say it's not that I didn't know or think about or heard this before, but I think it just was a great reminder for me at this moment that exercise and moving the body is a great way to shift your energy, release some of the stress. It's really about knowing that your body has to be able to sustain you and take care of you. And so when you look at movement and you look at the fact that this is going to help you, I think, really with longevity. I mean, I think we have to all be willing to say that moving our body is one of the keystones of having a healthy life and really possibly moving us towards longevity. So that was one of the key habits for building resilience. Because we know that through that exercise and through that movement, we're able to release a lot of stress and we're able to get the dopamine hit. We're able to move through the day, I think, differently because it also affects our mental clarity. And then finally, number 5 was sleep. Prioritizing rest is what Jay said. Prioritize your rest, prioritize your sleep, specifically before midnight, because that's when the growth hormone is working at its highest level. So you don't want to trade your sleep for anything. And I think there was a time in my life when I maybe even, I don't know, celebrated or thought it was cool that I could function so well on 5 hours of sleep. And I know now that that's not healthy. I know I need at a minimum, really now I think I need a minimum of 7 hours. And there was just a morning the other day where I got up at my normal time is like 5 a.m. Sometimes I'm up at 4:30. And I thought of Jay. He popped into my head and I heard him say, prioritize your sleep. And I said, you know what? I'm going to roll over and get one more hour of sleep. And I did. And I may not be able to do that every day, but yet on that day, giving up an hour didn't create a problem for me. It gave me so much more. I felt more at peace. I felt like I had a clarity of mind. I felt like I had energy. And so how often can you prioritize your sleep and get to bed earlier, maybe, get an extra hour of sleep and really make sure that you're resting? So, and here's the thing about this, guys. The sleep is not just because your body needs to recover. Your brain needs to recover. Your brain is rejuvenating and recovering and getting back to optimal function during your sleep. And so that's why getting enough sleep is so important. So those were the 5 habits for building resilience. Thankfulness or gratitude. Number 2 was insight. Number 3 was mindfulness. Number 4 was exercise. And number 5 was sleep. And I will just give you a little bit more content, some things that I know about Jay and what he talks about on this subject on resilience. And as I said, he shared with us some thoughts that were not just the typical definition about resilience, like the self-regulation. He said that resilience is also the ability to create better habits. And so if some of the things that you've heard here today are resonating with you, then I'm going to have you ask yourself, can I create some better habits here? Because that's a key concept of resilience. And, one of the things I know I've heard Jay talk about, he refers to it in his book as the monk switch. The monk switch. And that's the ability to quickly shift from a stressed or a negative state into a focused, meditative, or grateful one. And that may take a little discipline. It may take a little time to develop. But I can tell you that when I'm able to regulate my nervous system, I'm back in control. I'm back in the driver's seat. And I get it. Sometimes we have these days where life's just coming at you and your anxiety is just getting higher and higher. And it may feel like you can't control yourself, but you always can. We always have control over our response to things. And so that monk switch is something to develop because it gives you the ability to quickly shift from that stress state to a much more calm, focused, more meditative state. I'm going to leave you with a couple thoughts here that Jay shared from the stage. He said, it's not what you do for work that brings you meaning. It's how you feel about your work. And so when you are moving through your day, I love that we can take a moment and say, how am I feeling about this? Now that takes practice because a lot of times we are moving throughout the day and we're sort of on autopilot. We might be operating a lot from our subconscious. So imagine if you could raise your awareness and take a moment and actually say, okay, how am I feeling about this? And really take some inventory of your emotions because your emotions are shaping your thoughts. And then your thoughts are becoming the things you say and do. So if we can take a moment and really connect with our feelings and evaluate how we're feeling about something, we can make some decisions to get back in alignment with what we need most. And so I thought that was really powerful too. So I'm curious, what has resonated with you in this conversation? What did you hear today that made a difference for you? I felt that we were all really very engaged with Jay, and if you've listened to his podcast, he's a great speaker. He has some very simple yet profound teachings. And I'm really excited that I was able to be there in the room, and I'm excited that I could share, some of these points with you. So let me know what resonated with you. Send me a DM or put it on our Facebook page. And if this quick episode resonated with you in such a way, share it with a friend, because I think that we can all benefit from developing a little bit more resilience, realizing that we have the ability to navigate our life, that life isn't happening to us. It's happening for us. And if we can develop some of the mindset around resilience and realize that all the grinding is maybe not always the answer, then when we realize that, we can take a step back and actually make some decisions that are right for ourselves. So I'm really excited that I could give you some food for thought today. So thanks for being here. As always, it's such a pleasure. I really don't take for granted the fact that you take some time out of your day and hang out with me every week. I love doing this podcast with you. So if you have any thoughts or ideas on topics or questions for me, I'm happy to engage with you. So definitely send me a note, and you can find me on all the social platforms. I'm on Instagram as @Coach Anna Gibbs. So connect with me there. I'm on Substack, LinkedIn, Facebook. So I'm pretty accessible. And if there's ever a question that you have about mindset or coaching or working with me, I would love to chat with you. So definitely take the time to reach out, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for being here.